First off, I'd like to thank you for sitting down and talking with me. And this disclaimer that I've been putting out on my most recent videos.
Okay.
I tend to use language that is not acceptable by most.
I love it.
And I have, sometimes I have crazy ideas and they're super wild and they don't coincide with the person that I'm interviewing.
Okay.
And I just want the people out there to know that if I say some wild shit, it's not because you endorse it.
It doesn't reflect us.
Yeah,
Great.
Exactly.
There's a lot of weird stuff around human trafficking that we don't endorse, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna take these off because they're kind of loud. How long have you been doing this?
About a year.
And what got you doing this?
Steve Bozeman.
Okay.
Are you familiar?
I know of.
He kind of swooped me up when I got to Lynchburg and kind of pushed me out into the limelight where I was like telling my story and doing like these testimonials and just putting myself in a very vulnerable position. But, you know, I got a really good response from it. People were like thanking me for doing it and it seemed to be helping certain people. So I was like, I have a love for photography and storytelling, and why not be an honest opinion of what's going on in the community. Okay.
Where are you from?
Ohio originally.
Oh, okay.
But I left when I was 19. Okay. Joined the Marine Corps. Okay. Got stationed in Southern California just to get as far from Ohio, or what Ohio is or was.
The armpit of the country.
Yeah.
I have a really good friend from there, and I always tease him. I'm like, oh, Ohio.
It's funny how like you meet so many people from Ohio, but none of them are in Ohio.
Right.
Like the first thing they do is they get out.
They get out of Ohio. That is funny.
And then that's the only thing I knew as a kid. I was like, I don't know what I want to be. I just know I want to get the hell out of here.
And what got you here? Lynchburg, of all places.
So there was a big span in between where I was just kind of this gypsy. I traveled the world trying to find different opinions of the. I was a Marine for 10 years. So just a little backstory. I was a Marine from 2003 to 2011. Okay. And I went overseas twice to Iraq, Fallujah and Al-Assad. I got to see some wild shit that you shouldn't have to see as a kid. Maybe, I don't know, but it impacted me in a way that like I didn't buy into any one system. Like I felt like I got to see behind the curtain a little bit. And when I came home and tried to reacclimate into the world, it didn't reflect how I felt about it. So I went out trying to find just different points of view to help me understand what was going on in my brain. Because at the time, this was before podcasts were a big thing, and like I just felt like I was alone in these thoughts. And then when I would try to talk to other people, I almost felt guilty, like ignorance is bliss. And if I dumped all my bullshit on them, then they would be thinking how I think, and I thought that the way I thought was miserable. So I set on this really long journey of really trying to like find perspective and try and find peace in my own head. And so cut to we moved to Nashville, my girlfriend and I. We had been living on the road, Sprinter van, bus life, like very nomadic. Right. And what took us to Nashville was an organization that got started by a special operations buddy of mine who got into human trafficking, or the combating of it. And he sold me on this promise that I was going to get to go hurt people that were hurting kids. And there was really nothing else that appealed more to me at the time for whatever reason. I just it's obviously a touchy subject, anything that has to do with kids and the exploitation of them and hurting them and kind of just reinforcing this cycle of hurt begetting hurt. So yeah, I was like, I'll be that person that cuts the snake's head off, but it wasn't the case, and it kind of put a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, just the way that they ran everything, and where I felt like maybe some of the money was going, or maybe their business model just in general. So then I was kind of back to square one, because the idea of doing all this for
was it specifically for ex-military, this nonprofit?
Not necessarily for them, but he was heavily recruiting former military people at the time.
Yep. All right.
And the idea was that we were going to go into these other countries where this was happening, and we were going to remove these children from this situation.
Yeah, interesting.
And not to talk poorly about it, but what I didn't find okay with it was it just seemed like instead of fighting it, we were kind of fueling it.
That's right.
And I just walked away from it, and it kind of put me back at like square one.
Yep.
And then we just happened to come into Lynchburg one day because we knew we wanted to set some roots somewhere. And I'd been enough places in the world where I had an idea of what, if I saw something that I liked or that I thought maybe had potential, I'd recognize it.
Yeah.
And we were house sitting for family members who were headed this way. And for a few months, we would venture out to different small towns in Virginia. And we just came into Lynchburg on a Saturday, I think, in the springtime. It was beautiful. Farmer's market. There was construction. You could tell there was money. People were polite. It just seemed like a good place to be. And then we came back another weekend, or another week on a Friday, and I saw what was going on at Monument Terrace. And that hits home for me on the veteran level. And it just seemed like a good place. So I just started shopping around for apartments.
That's cool.
Got into one pretty quick, and then it just kind of snowballed. I went down to Monument Terrace a couple times, and Steve snatched me up immediately, saw my cameras, and was like, hey, let's do this. And then really kind of pushed me into this vulnerable position where it's like, people, I don't know, I feel obligated now to kind of just find out who's doing what in the community. Because I don't even know if you asked me this question, how we got here, but like, I have this idea that, Lynchburg can be the example of what it looks like when a community really comes together. And the reason that we would need to come together is because there's imminent threat always looming, whether it's a solar flare that knocks out our power grid, terrorist act, civil war, just whatever the case may be, there's always something that could possibly happen.
Sure.
And what are we doing as a community to get ready for that and prepared for that? And I think one of the things that we can do is highlight who the leaders of the community are and what they're doing and how we can all participate and contribute to the grand picture.
So how long have you been here? Was it last year that you
I'm coming up on 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. So I just hit the 1 year anniversary of being in my first home.
Okay.
So it's like now I have a home and I really feel vested.
Yeah. Where'd you buy?
Right off Link, next to Oakwood. It's on Royal Boulevard.
Okay, cool.
Cool little neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, right down the road.
Yeah. What's your girlfriend do?
She works for some cloud company. She works from home.
Okay.
She manages cloud.
Some cloud company.
She manages cloud accounts for I think Google. She's a third party company.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. I love that answer.
I haven't had a normal job in so long. I couldn't even tell you what most people do.
Okay. So is this your job right now, or is this like your side hustle?
This is nothing. This is just me giving me an excuse to be actively involved in my community.
All right, fair.
Because I've done the mayor a couple times, chief of police, Congressman Bob Good. I'd like to get a few more council members. I want to be the guy that kind of cuts through all the bullshit and has some of the real uncomfortable conversations.
Okay.
I think putting some of our shit on the table kind of helps us figure out what we can do. And
So the mayor, that's how we got connected.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I came to the summit.
Okay. Cool.
And I couldn't stay too long, but I wanted to see if there was maybe not an abbreviated version, but just maybe more on the details of how, I don't know, what we can do as community members to really help this, facilitate this, and then also like be aware of if we have kids, how all this works. Because I sat in on enough meetings to know some of the really horrifying stats of all this. And that's what really got me wanting. I have a daughter, she's 19, she'll be 20 this year. So I'm kind of past the point of really being like overprotective of her in this area. She's kind of leaving the nest now, so she's going to have to navigate these waters. But
is she here?
I get it. No, she's in Northern California.
Okay.
And I want to know what organizations are doing, I guess, more locally too. Because like I said, my problem with the organization I was with was they were in Nashville, they're Americans, but most of what they're trying to help is overseas in other countries.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that's great. Sure. And I can get on board with helping kids no matter where they're from.
That's right.
But what are we doing in our own community? Because it's a problem.
That's right.
What are the numbers? First of all, let's...
That was my interview of you. There you go. Is everything running?
It is,
So we're just like...
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Which is how I like it.
No, that's fine. I was just like, is it officially starting? So what do you want to know? Sorry.
Yeah, also, I don't know what I'm doing, so it's just about having
a conversation
and hoping that when I get to the editing board, there's enough that's interesting enough to keep people's attention, but also like informative.
Okay.
Who are you? What organization are we talking about? And how did you get into it?
Okay. My name is Joy Cover. I work at Freedom 424. I have been with the organization since 2015, so almost 8 years. So a little bit about, me, and then I'll get to the organization. I lead the organization, but I didn't start as the president. I started as the national race director because at the time, we had a lot of 5K races across the country. We used those opportunities as a way to bring community together and then to educate people about and bring awareness to the issue of human trafficking. But I quickly, after getting into that role, I told the then president, listen, this is not, I don't feel like this is the best use of my time. My job is not to put on good races. My job is to help prevent and end human trafficking, and there's a better way, I think. And trends change, times change, and running wasn't as much of a popular thing. Now we have, CrossFit and yoga and all these other things. And I think running kind of was coming out of its trendiness at the time. So people weren't involved as much in 5Ks. So it felt like a lot of pushing a boulder up the hill and that, okay, we're establishing a race here for this end game, but really it's taking so much work to just put this event on. We're missing the mark. So anyway, my point was the platform can change. We're just using, these things are just the platform that can change. So I moved into more of the director of programs role where we started encompassing other platforms, other ways to engage with the community, really for the purpose of educating them. People don't want to talk about human trafficking. People don't understand it. So there's a lot of, I think, fear around it or just burying your head in the sand. And so being creative about how we engage our audience, how we engage our community was a huge part of that role. So then in 2017, I stepped into the president role. I have a background in public health, a master's in public health, and so I very much believe that from that perspective, prevention is huge. And engaging issues at all levels. So yes, the individual, understanding how, let's apply that to human trafficking, how I can be responsible for preventing and how I can protect myself from human trafficking as part of it, but then the interpersonal side of things, the community conversations, and the social components of that, all the way up to the policy changes. So it's not just the interpersonal conversations that need to happen, but we need to be addressing human trafficking at all levels, and that's very much a human public health model. And so when I came into this role, I really, move the organization towards that. How can we be involved in all of these different components in the best way that we can without stretching ourselves? And then looking at what is being done to actually stop human trafficking and recognizing, there are, maybe not a lot, but there are lots of efforts around human trafficking in the aftercare and restoration side, but what are we doing to stop it before it ever starts? And I feel that prevention education is a huge part of that. Let's help to equip people to recognize what it is and how we can protect ourselves, our kids, our communities, before that exploitation becomes part of someone's story. Because to put a life back together after the exploitation involves, so many resources that are expensive. So if you're a politician who thinks in numbers, that right there should be a huge motivation factor. I don't only think that way, but that's one of our marketing tactics. Think about how much it costs to put somebody's life back together when you consider legal fees, people fighting custody battles, trying to get find housing, appropriate education after they have a record. Like all of these things is so much effort. Let's come back here and stop it. So that's a bit about, and side note, very personal, I don't have sexual abuse as part of my history. It's not something that I've been impacted with, and I feel strongly that those of us who don't have that as part of our history are even more responsible for coming alongside those who do, because sometimes it's hard for them to get out of bed and fight this battle. So I want to be there for them when they can't be. And so I don't know why, and that's I think a little bit of guilt in that. I think the founder for Freedom 424, she often talked about that, why did I not experience this when so many people have? And not even human trafficking, just sexual abuse in general. It's so pervasive in our culture. And so it just feels weird almost that why, what, does that make sense? It just seems unfair, and not that I would want that, but part of me hurts for those people who have had to experience that, and I want to do what I can to provide them with the resources. So anyway, not a part of my history, feel very driven to be part of this fight, have a background in public health. I now have 2 daughters who are 2 and 4, and so it's even more personal. So that's me. Freedom 424, we were founded in 2009 by a college student who went to Thailand, and at that point, she was doing an internship for her church, learning about this organization in Thailand, combating human trafficking, came home with, among many things, this knowledge that it's about, you can buy a person for a whole day for $24 in Thailand. And so she started Freedom 424, with no big plans for it other than this is a t-shirt company for college students. Buy this t-shirt for $24 and let's use that $24 to help bring freedom by supporting this amazing organization in Thailand who is providing restoration and aftercare through education efforts. So that's how we started. We started their 5K race series, and since then have really been growing towards being more targeted in our approach to be on the prevention side, on the forefront of the exploitation. We do have a foot in the restoration through our partners. We have 4 domestic and 4 international partners, and we fund them. Last year we gave about $100,000 towards funding those organizations. Like an example, in Uganda, we underwrite the operating costs for a safe house for girls 12 through 17. And then our partner provides the staff to run that. And they're Ugandan staff, so Ugandans serving Ugandans, we pay for that shelter. And that's the aftercare piece. And then our main efforts are to prevent it. So that's an overview.
Yeah. So you're spending the money in other countries as well. What are you guys doing in Lynchburg and the surrounding area specifically with the money that's donated? And
so we, in our fight to provide prevention, we have been developing our own curriculum. And right now, so prevention education, we have 3 kind of areas of focus: youth, parents, and then specific occupations. So with our youth, we have curriculum for grades right now, grades 5 through 10, that's being piloted it's in Campbell County. It's being implemented through Impact Living Services. That's a foster care agency. And then there's an international school. And we're working on adding 1 more sector to that because we want to close that pilot out by the end of this school year with the goal to roll that out statewide in fall of 2024. So we're already moving towards that goal. Where we're piloting in Campbell County, they have 1 school involved, and they've shared that it's been really successful. So they're going to roll the curriculum out countywide next year, or next school year. So my goal is we finish that pilot, we refine the curriculum based on the data we collect and roll it out as a resource for the state. We are working with DCJS to get that to happen. And my goal is to eventually have a library of curriculum for all ages, because I believe everybody needs to be in this conversation. We just need to present the information in an age-appropriate way that makes sense. So, for my 2-year-old, I'm already talking to my 2-year-old about ways that she can protect herself. We use proper body parts. Like, you don't have a boob-op, you have a vagina. This should not be an element of shame. This is who she is, right? So, or this is what she has. So if someone ever crosses the boundary and touches that in an inappropriate way, she's able to verbalize properly, no, he didn't touch my cookie, he touched my vagina. And she has the words to say. And I think that's so important. This is just a side thought. When we talk about human trafficking victims, and I'm specifically thinking of one in the area that we work with, she said when she was trafficked, she didn't even know what human trafficking was at the time. This was maybe like 10 or 11 years ago. She didn't even know what it was. So when she was trafficked for the first, she had 2 traffickers. Her boyfriend was the first one. And 3 months in, she was picked up by the cops and put in jail. And she reached out for help, but she didn't even know, she didn't even have the words to say what was happening because she didn't understand. And that's just such an important idea, is giving people the language, the words to be able. So anyway, back to our curriculum. I want a curriculum for kids as young as my 2-year-old all the way to my grandmother. So right now, because our curriculum is in the development stage for that grades 5 through 10, it's based on the Virginia Standards of Learning. So it's really attractive to school systems. It's really, we're working in a way that makes it accessible for schools to roll this out, but also that we feel comfortable in having this curriculum implemented through our aftercare plan. So I think that's a component that makes our curriculum different. So many prevention education curriculums, and we were using 3 different curriculums when we first started this in 2018. And there was it was just like, okay, you go in and you do this program and check, you've done your prevention, and then what? Like, there was no strong aftercare plan. There was no strategy to follow up on kids who are flagged as either in risk for being trafficked or at risk for that happening. So in risk actually being exploited and trafficked in their, whether it was through a relationship, whether it's through a gang, whatever it was, or at risk for that happening. There was no follow-up plan communicated, trained, in place at all. So for our curriculum that we're piloting right now, there's a very strong aftercare plan where that implementation site needs to identify who their mental health professional is, that if a child is flagged as either in or at risk, we can connect them with that mental health professional, that the National Human Trafficking Hotline is contacted, that CPS is notified, and that's for at risk. And if they're in risk, then also the appropriate law enforcement are brought into the conversation. And that child is provided with the resources necessary to get out of that situation or to make sure that that doesn't happen to them. So we're really passionate about making sure that aftercare plan is in place. So that's what, right now for youth, grades 5 through 10, with the goal to have curriculum for all kids. Then it's really hard to be a parent these days when you have no idea what the hell you're doing. So especially when you're talking about human trafficking, it's scary. You don't want to think that this is happening to your kids. So we have parent workshops to talk to them about this, to one, educate them about the issue, and then just equip them with ways that they can keep their kids safe. You're never going to be able to keep up with, I think, all of the things that technology provides. There's always some new social media platform. So really it's helping to understand, well, you don't have to keep up with all the technology, but you do have to have conversations with your kids early and often and be talking to them and building relationships with them. Again, I go back to my kid, it's personal, right? So talking to my kids now and starting the rhythms of conversation where they feel safe coming and talking to us no matter what. And that no topic is off the books, that working to remove the shame from conversations that may be challenging, so that if someone comes to them down the road and they're in a relationship or whatever, and they're asked to send a nude photo or they're asked to do something they're uncomfortable with, that we have built a system of communication that they feel comfortable sharing. That's part of it. Over 50% of kids report that they're either extremely or very afraid of disappointing their parents, and that's why they don't report hard things. And so if we can work to bring that percentage down, and we can have parents who maybe have their own sexual trauma be more comfortable about talking about vaginas and sex and things like that, then that will eliminate some of the isolation that makes kids so vulnerable to being exploited in the first place. So this parent workshops. And then lastly, we have occupation-specific training. So again, anyone, it's really helping people within their sphere of influence to understand what human trafficking is, and then what they can do to prevent and to combat it. So what can banks do? What can the healthcare system do? What can an attorney do? What can a teacher do? So between those three groups, the youth, the parents, and the specific occupations, that really just kind of, we're getting the whole community, hopefully, all for the purpose of educating and stopping the exploitation. And so we do that here in our community, and really to anyone who asks us. And because we're located here in Lynchburg, Central Virginia tends to receive most of the care. But as we grow, I want us to be on the forefront of this. I want us to be known nationwide as the human trafficking prevention education nonprofit. Like, I don't want to, yes, the aftercare is essential, and we may invest in efforts around that, but I want our primary focus to be the prevention education.
So that was a lot. I'm trying to,
yeah.
No, you're good. It's a lot of information that is so good for everybody that's watching. But my mom, I think she was a victim of sexual abuse when she was a child. And I watched her grow up. She had me at 18. Mm-hmm. So I watched her deal with all that most of our life together. So much so that when I've had a daughter, before I knew what human trafficking was or that it was an issue, I knew that sexual violence was a real issue. So I was very honest with my daughter at a very young age.
Yeah.
The reason I say all that is, do you think that there's a negative effect that might be happening with kids being introduced to some of these evils of the world too soon? If I look at my daughter's life and I am honest about what kind of dad I was, and she's even told me at times maybe the one critique she would have on me as a dad is that I was too honest at times. So much so that it scared her to participate in life. It's harder for her to make a decision. It's harder for herself to put herself out there. It's harder for her to take risks. In trying to be such a good dad and letting her know of all the evil that exists, I feel like I might have crippled her just a little bit. That, just maybe being there and watching from afar could have been almost as good than maybe telling her so much about it. Yeah. What do you think about that? Well, because there has been a lot of stats lately of this newer generation, and the ones that follow it, they're not as easy to make a decision. It's harder for them. Like all the things I just said about my daughter kind of reflect some of the
across the board.
Do you think that has something to do with it, or what?
I mean, the world is not a safe place, right? And I'm overwhelmed by that more and more. But at the same time, I do think we have a responsibility, or at least I have a desire to protect my kids from that fact as long as I can. So I'm not suggesting that. I think the self-reflection, I love that you're able to sit back and consider that, and that's a hard thing to do.
It's all I do every day.
It's hard. So you're like, even in the throes of it, you're like, oh my gosh, did I do that right? I mean, I think your kid. You're the person who knows your kid the best. So I would say first, every parent would have those work with their kid or have those conversations in a way that you feel like fits your kid best. So what may work for my oldest may not work for my youngest, but so that concept in conjunction with the world's not safe, but we also don't want to just dump that on them, along with the reality that there are people out there who are intentionally targeting our kids. it's a balance. And I don't know that I have a real clear answer other than that they're going to hear about it anyway, whether it's from you or for someone else. And I mean, even my husband and I right now are debating, my daughter is 4, she'll be 5, and she's going to be going to school soon. And I work in this field, and I know that the average age of exposure to pornography is between 8 and 11 years old. And that kids, when they're exposed to graphic content, it can help to shape their worldview and how they're viewed and what they're supposed to do in relationships. And that so many people have a history of sexual abuse before they're 18. So the sexual abuse, the exposure to graphic content early, along with the fact that when you're talking about human trafficking, it's a very relational crime. It's not the stranger danger that so many people envision it as. As I'm sure you're aware, it's very relational. It's, anytime.
It's usually somebody at home.
It's
right?
somebody they know.
Very close to home.
Exactly. Over 90% of the time, trafficked victims knew their trafficker before they were exploited. Over 90%. And yes, the top 2 ways are through a romantic partner or through a family member. So.
What's the we all know that if you break down Lynchburg, there's certain parts of town that have more resources, have more access to resources, and others that don't. Would you say there's a correlation with where you live in the city and the amount of this abuse and this problem that we see? Or is it across the board? If you were just looking at a map and there was no lines, it would just be everywhere?
Yes to both. I think that the more risk factors you have, the more vulnerabilities you have, it makes you more susceptible to this. So if you break it down and just look at, okay, vulnerabilities, are there housing insecurities, food insecurities, lack of education, those types of things, that makes you more vulnerable to being exploited because traffickers are looking for vulnerabilities to exploit, a need to be met. But I would say also it doesn't matter those breakdowns because ultimately I think we all experience relational poverty to some extent, and what I mean by that is we all want community, we all want love, we all want to be accepted, and especially kids who are going through some of those really, puberty, maybe parents divorcing, moving to a new place, like seeking, wanting community, wanting to be accepted and loved. It makes, no matter who you are, what socioeconomic status or, wherever you fall on that line, it doesn't really matter. In addition to the fact that the internet knows no, demographic boundaries, everyone's accessible online. And so between all of those things, I would say, okay, someone's reaching out to a child through some platform on the internet. Maybe that child has more vulnerabilities against them, so they may be more susceptible. But that another child who's being reached out, same age, and maybe doesn't have experienced housing issues or food insecurity, but they are fighting with their parents and they are, wanting a boyfriend, they can be exploited as well. And I think that's one of the things that we really try to combat. Yes, we recognize that when you have more vulnerabilities or those risk factors, you are more susceptible. But even if you don't have all of those stacked against you, just wanting community and wanting to be loved can also be used against you. And it's enraging. I mean, yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, really. I think what we would just say is everybody needs to know that when we have the online access to kids online, when predators have access to kids online, and when kids are not aware that they are specifically being targeted, they are vulnerable. Yeah.
So it seems like pedophilia and the need to see kids in these vulnerable states is attractive to a decent amount of people, it would seem, right? Because it's such a huge industry. The reason why trafficking exists in the first place is because there's people that are willing to either pay to see it or to experience it or whatever. What does that say about human beings, or what's your thought on it's obviously a desire for a lot of people, even in a community like this that claims to be, hyper-Christian and of good moral standings. It's a problem here. I don't know what the stats are, but I'm assuming that somebody at the human trafficking summit is a pedophile or has been, you know, just on stats alone, there had to be at least one person there that's dabbled, if we're looking at the numbers. So I don't know what my question was. Oh, like, what do you think it is about human beings that creates this industry, this problem? And if we could cut the snake off at the head, what do you think that would be? Like, because here's my thing. I always thought, because I've always grown up with this understanding that men or grown men and women will take advantage of children, because I saw how it affected my mom. So it's kind of always been on my mind. And it was, I think a majority of these people had something happen to them at an early age that hardwired something just enough that as they've gotten older, their brain just never progressed past that point. And it's not so much that they're evil people, it's just that, you know, for whatever reason, maybe when they were 7 or they were 8 or they were 11 or 12 or 13, something happened to them that made them feel love and admiration for somebody of the other sex or whatever, and it was in that state. It was at that age, and it just never
like the Arrested
progressed.
Development type thing. Yeah.
I don't know. It's obviously a complicated subject, and I don't even know what my question was exactly. But what do you think it is about the hardwiring of that, and like, how do we fix that? Because I think that's what, you know, a big part of the problem is just us getting hardwired at a certain age and just it being what they like.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, I'm not
that I'm advocating for the.
No. I understand what you're saying though, like, because you want to understand, because what would bring a person to a state, a place in life where they could do something to another human in this way? And I mean, yeah, I'm not a mental health professional, so I can't necessarily speak on it from a scientific perspective. I mean, we know a bit about the brain and how it's developed, and I would agree with you that hurt people tend to hurt people. So it is kind of a perpetual cycle.
And it might not even be that they're hurt. It just might be that, you know, how, for whatever reason, like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched Chris Hansen bust those pedophiles when they're coming to the door with like chocolate and you know, some beer or some seltzer or whatever alcoholic drink kids like, or, you know, teenagers like. Those guys never seem very mature. You know, they all seem like they're childlike. In the way that they even talk once they've been captured. And half of them, they're a deer in headlights. Like, they don't even know really that they're doing anything wrong. And I know we're getting away from the subject a little bit, but it's like, I don't know.
So the guy at the summit, Captain Steve Anders with ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children, he said, you know, and I think he may have even mentioned it then, like, in all his years of working to specifically catch predators who would go after kids online, he's like, out of all those cases, he's never met what he would define as an actual pedophile, but it's more people who are chasing the next deviant thing. So they start, and not that everyone who uses pornography goes down this hole, so let me be clear.
I was going to say, I'm one of those people.
Yeah, it's not.
I've had access to porn since I was, when the internet came in, when I was right around 16, 17. So I've had access to porn since then. So it doesn't
mean that you
And I've never, once in my life, even had an idea, an inkling, an itch to go and even see what that looks like. Just not at all.
So it's not across it's not like if you use porn all the way across the board. But what he has seen is every single person who is down the stream and seeking these deviant things. And then he shared some like horrible things that he has seen involving babies, and just like, it's just horrible. But he would say that it starts with pornography, and it's just they in order to meet the sexual demand that they have, they're seeking the next thing, and so it digresses to that. And as far as the, you know, to answer your question regarding, you know, kids being more vulnerable, there is in general a trend towards, you know, if the search engines, I mean, there's research that's being done that, you know, specific searches for girls and younger girls and teenagers and adolescents and even pornography that is, done by majors, adult people, they're oftentimes made to look younger or to dress like a schoolgirl. I mean, I did a training, what was it, last fall in Charlottesville. It was to 200 law enforcement agents, and prior to going that day, I had somebody help me pull within like a mile or two of that location in Charlottesville a couple of illicit massage businesses, and then just some different advertisements in that area. And it was the ones that were pulled were girls dressed in schoolgirls uniforms, like girls wearing pigtails, like they were not children or minors, but it just seems like there's more and more of a demand for that, and so when there's a demand, the supply needs to be met, and sometimes it is kids. So I do hold pornography a bit responsible for this, because there is the demand, and if kids are caught in that, then they're part of this, part of the cycle. So
is there an emphasis on mental health, like as part of, I guess that was where I was trying to go with all that. It seems like a mental health issue.
Yeah.
And I didn't find mental clarity until I was much older. Like I spent most of my 20s trying to figure out what all this was.
Yeah.
After all my little traumatic experiences in the military and such. Knowing as much as we do now about mental health and dopamine and how we achieve, like on the side, what I really am passionate about is mental health and how that goes across the board. I think this is a mental health issue, like I said, but things like cold plunging and sauna and diet and exercise and good sleep and just all these things that truly affect how our brain works. Where's the emphasis in this genre on educating on some of that stuff? Because I think also, happier people don't have to like the dopamine thing. For when you tell me that like the porn, it's like a snowball effect, I can understand that from a dopamine point of view, because whatever got you off the first few times.
You see more.
And maybe I've never felt that way because I don't use porn to make me happy or to get dopamine. I get into cold water and I go on long runs and I do all these other things that help spike my dopamine throughout the day. But there are a lot of people just sitting around lazy, and they know that this button works, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. And that's when you start.
That's what it is, the de-escalation. The escalation. The downhill effect. Yes, they need more in order to get that dopamine spike and more stimulation, and that's what Steve talks about, is that they need something more deviant to have the same spiking dopamine effect. So, I mean, from a mental health perspective, our curriculum, our curriculum developer has a background in clinical psychology. We have mental health professionals on the advisory group who reviews all the curriculum, because we do think that mental health is such an important component, specifically for kids, helping them to recognize and understand within their own body when do they feel unsafe, starting to recognize some of those warning signs, being able to communicate, this is a boundary that I have, and when that's crossed, I mean, that's all it should be. In my mind, it's like healthy relationships, it seems so basic, but that's where we start with our training, because we want kids to recognize what healthy relationships look like. What is a boundary? What is consent? What is respect? What is trust? And part of that is understanding within yourself who you are and what makes you uncomfortable. And I would say that's a mental health issue. That's a lot of mental health processing. And then we progress from there. Okay, here's healthy relationships. Now here's human trafficking. Here's what an unhealthy relationship looks like. And so if someone ever crosses these boundaries and makes you feel uncomfortable. And then throughout our curriculum, we do have checks that when we train our facilitators, they are trained to be trauma informed. In other words, to be able to recognize those red flags, recognize when the curriculum might be triggering kids. So I'm not sure I remember your question, because we kind of... But as far as mental, but as far as the mental health piece, it's incredibly important, especially in the curriculum when talking about how to help kids protect themselves and to recognize, when do they feel unsafe.
Do you think if we showed more compassion to the ones that were guilty of some of these crimes, that we might be able to start infiltrating some of these mental health ideas over to them? Do you think by, like, if I was going to put myself in a position to hurt some of these people, right? And I had to think about this long and hard. Am I capable of going in, and if you ask most people, like, hell yeah, kill them. But it's like, you have to really start thinking about this. Like, if I'm going to have to end somebody's life because their crime is being attracted to young kids, or I have to be able to empathize with how a person can get to that position, because they all started off as kids too.
Right.
So do you think that their way of life or the things that they find enjoyment in are demonized and looked as like one of the worst things that you can do in life, maybe adding fuel to the fire? And I'm only, sometimes I feel like I have a really good idea and then it comes out and it doesn't sound as good. But I just think that, and I want to get your thoughts on it, if we empathize with them a little bit more in their position, and maybe came at them with a different approach, if it would work better than what's going on now.
I mean, I think that thought philosophy can be applied to a lot of things. I'll answer your question in a moment, but I would say how we, from just a legal policy perspective, how we deal with survivors themselves, victims of human trafficking, needs to be changed in the same way, because most of the time they are not, from the outside perspective, you can't tell that they're being trafficked. Most of the time, there's somebody who's being picked up for larceny or theft or drug trafficking or something else, and it's not observed what's going on behind the scenes. And our system is not set up to support them or to have a more compassionate, victim-centered approach. And those are for the survivors specifically. So I would say, where your thought is, it can be applied to both sides of this. For the victims first, and in the state of Virginia, we're on a state coalition that's working to support policies that are helping both law enforcement and lawmakers to recognize so many people are actually victims who are, we need to have a more victim-centered approach. But as far as the perpetrators, I mean, it's hard to wrap your mind around that. And first of all, I wouldn't agree with going and kicking their heads in. Like, maybe that would be what I would want to do. Sure. But when you actually think about doing that, that's setting yourself up to be the same. How is that any different from what they're doing? You're going out there and you're taking justice into your own hands. When you're right, they're another human being. Yes, they've hurt someone and they should be held accountable for that. So I think it's two separate issues. They should be held accountable for what they have done to children, but that doesn't mean that, you should just, free range, justice.
Well, some animals go rabid and they need to be put down. And some people have there's no saving them. But it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell sometimes who those people are.
Sure, but do you think that taking it into individuals' hands and doing that I don't believe that that's necessarily the right way to do it, because that's making yourself God.
Well, I think I've ended people's lives on this planet for a lot less, and for someone that I didn't understand who I was doing it for. So if I have to then think about doing it in a certain capacity,
knowing why you're doing it,
I can justify that more than I could justify some of my previous actions.
But that's a whole other discussion we're talking
for sure.
about, because and that's a conversation I'd love to have, is in the military, do you think that we're doing the right thing?
Absolutely not.
Right.
I would say we haven't been doing the right thing for a very long time.
Right. So if that's not right, then how does the equivalent of this how is that right?
It's not a matter of if that's right, but if human beings have a capacity for violence. It's the one thing that I think we've done for as long as we've been human beings, is we've waged war on other people for not being in our tribe.
Doesn't make it right.
But if our tribe is protecting children, and there's a subgroup of people that are hurting said children, I can get behind that a lot easier than I can And that's just my primitive male brain.
No, I get
bad thing, kill it.
Right. I mean, if someone would hurt my kids, I would be probably, the same.
But I also come from the stance that while I would have the ability to do that, now it's case by case. Now say we've got somebody who's been raping and murdering kids since he was 14 years old, like a Jeffrey Dahmer type person. There's no rehabilitating this person. He's gone. Then yes, I can see taking him out. He's a problem in my mind.
Yeah.
And but I also come from the school of thought that like we should empathize with some of these people and
I mean, I don't think that an individual like that should ever be around everyday society ever again, but I don't know that taking justice into one's own hand and killing him is the answer either. Like, maybe they will never be rehabilitated, but maybe this is the evil part of me, but I'm like, what is the worst punishment they could get? Death is probably too good for them. Like, what are some other things we could do? But I don't agree. I think that if we start taking, justice into our own hands in that way, then we're crossing a line ourselves and we're opening ourselves up to be impacted negatively, not positively. So yes, I think mental health is important. Yes, I think separation from society is important in those situations. I don't have all the answers, but
of course,
generally I don't. While I might say the word hate, I would hate individuals like that. I would really struggle, obviously. I don't agree with the vigilante justice.
It's kind of my thing. I mean, I had one time, because after getting out of the military, I participated just enough to see kind of all moving parts of what we were doing over there. And it was very unsettling. But
when you were in the military.
But it was also like, there's a part of me that understands why it exists and how human beings and men can get to the position where this is the answer. But I was motivated by a movie called Boondock Saints. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just this idea that I feel like there's true evil that exists and it gets to, dance on whatever the legal system is and gets away with quite a bit. And I don't know, it was just, I didn't like that at that time of my life. Even so much so that I tattooed both my hands with, truth and justice, because I had felt like I had done some bad with my hands, and I figured that this was my way to do some right. And I was primarily focused on what I think arguably is what most people agree on. Like if a pedophile goes to jail, usually they don't make it through. It handles itself in those situations. So it was like, well, crooked politicians who, spend money and allow this to happen, priests and people in power in the church and religion, I had a problem with them. And then, pedophiles and how all of those three things were kind of intertwined.
Yeah.
That's what I was focused on. And so when my buddy asked me to come and do this thing, I was like, holy shit.
This is your thing.
Somebody was listening.
Yeah, but
and then I got into that, and I saw how that operated. I'm all for the mechanic. I like to understand how things operate. I like to understand how things get from a newborn child to some of the most dangerous, horrific human beings that have ever existed. It's fascinating. So it's
heartbreaking.
it is heartbreaking, but it's fascinating how it can we all start kind of from the same place. Like obviously we've got different genetics, but
essentially, a blank.
We're so different.
Somewhat blank.
So different.
With trauma, we're learning more and more about that. So even that.
I had a ton of trauma as a kid.
Yeah.
Like I was sexually abused to an extent. I had a lot of physical abuse from a step parent. And it affected me in a lot of fucked up ways. Like I was sadistic as a kid. I hurt animals. Like I did a lot of things. I was a bully. I picked on kids at school. I got picked on too. Like it was I was the definition of hurt likes to hurt. And somewhere along the line...
where? I was supposed to say, where did the trajectory change?
I got blown up by an IED in Iraq, and it changed my personality. And I don't know that would have... I don't know that I wouldn't have made that progress without that explosion, but there was something about that really altered the way that my brain operated. And then I spent a lot of time rebuilding my brain and like just reconstructing those neural pathways. And now I'm so far from who I used to be, but it's strange sitting in this place that I am, because I can still see that person. I'm aware that I was able to be that person. And then now knowing so much about how the brain is wired and develops, it's like, oh shit, like I wasn't a bad kid. That was this, like I hurt a few animals, right? And I still think about that stuff.
But you were so hurt yourself.
Exactly.
Like, you were so hurt and nobody was protecting you and taking care of you.
But that's the same person that ends up being a pedophile. That's the same person that ends up getting into trafficking.
And that's what I'm saying. It's two separate things, because the trafficker still needs to be held responsible for what they're doing to somebody. But I think part of us can be compassionate for the child that they were, and to recognize they were hurt and nobody protected them and no one kept them safe. But it doesn't mean that we just allow them to continue hurting people because of
So how do we get that
hurt.
message to them to let them know that?
There's a guy online I follow. He was abused by, a pedophile abused him when he was a child. His name is Jeremy Ndika. You should follow him. But he talks a lot about this as a victim who confronted his abuser later on, and he asks some of these questions, and he asks some of the mental health questions, and it's interesting. I don't have an answer necessarily, other than that, we continue educating people about the issue on both sides and help them understand, if we want to stop it, here's the thing, if we want to stop trafficking down the road from continuing, then we stop the abuse here, because we can recognize that probably the trafficker had some history of abuse and had some hurt back here. So again, I apply the same philosophy to, if we're protecting kids from being trafficked, then we need to protect kids from being traffickers. It all starts back with prevention, and some people would be like, oh, well, that's naive, that's ridiculous. But I don't think kids are dumb. I don't think that they can be pretty savvy, and equipped with the right knowledge, it can be life-saving, and it can remind them later on. We work with one girl who was 14. She's now in her 20s, but she got a text from a stranger and engaged with some texting back and forth. It became sexual. She was freaking out. And anyway, long story short, they set up a sting to catch the guy. Now, she entertained texts for I think 3 days before she told her parents. And she was 14. The guy was 28. She told him he was 14, and then he said he was 24, then he was 22, so he kept backing off on the age. And his plan was either to take her, this was over in Waynesboro, so he was going to take her to Harrisonburg and rape and kill her, or send her to Mexico to be a sex slave. She says that she had prevention education a year prior, and that is what came up and reminded her a year later, so it was a while, okay, at first she thought it was fun because she's texting a stranger. Her friends were encouraging her. The guy was sending her stupid sparkly kitty crap, whatever, ponies. But she remembered. And so I take that, I'm there is hope in this, both for both sides, for the predator side and for the victim side. And that's all I can focus on. I can't address all of the problems. And I know you're not saying that we should. I'm just saying I hear all of the things that you're saying. I get completely overwhelmed. I know in my gut the things that don't sit right with me, and I know where we can make a difference. And so we're going to focus our energy on that. I would say I'm not a huge fan, you didn't ask me, but I'm not a huge fan of the kick down the doors rescue kind of tactics. I know there's a lot of organizations that do that, and there's more and more of a trend more and more voices within the anti-trafficking community that are discouraging that kind of thing, just because it's even more traumatizing to the victims. But there is a place and time for that. However, not when it creates more demand, and I see that too a lot. in those different examples, like, oh yeah, we're going to rescue kids, and then actually it's creating more demand to bring the kids into those situations. And I'm very adamantly opposed to that. I think it's, in that case, those organizations they're trying to fill some other need in them. They're not really focused on.
Well, that was one of the issues I had. We were doing it overseas, and the promise in the beginning was that we were going to go in, not guns a-blazing, but we were going to go in with our own protection. We were going to go get these kids out of a bad situation, and we might have to hurt some people along the way. And it turned into, well, we're going to coordinate with local government. Local authorities are going to take us in. We can't have guns. We can't have our own protection, and we're not taking them away by force. We're making the transactions. We're giving money to the traffickers, so we've just become a customer. We're perpetuating the problem. If anything, so it was...
Right, it's not getting to the core. It's not stopping the trafficker. It's taking that group of kids away, and maybe those kids will receive the proper aftercare, or maybe they'll be put right back on the streets where they're re-exploited.
Maybe.
Yeah, it pisses me off.
And then it's like, at that point, is this really because you care about the kids, or are you just putting on a dog and pony so that way you can make it seem like you're helping kids, so that way you can get a fuck ton of money.
That's right.
And then you can, who knows what you do with it.
Yeah, I know. The work that we do is not glamorous and it's not romantic, and I would say some of the best organizations combating this work are doing it in very low-key, humble, again, like the organization in Thailand. Now, there are organizations in Thailand that are busting down doors and they think they're the shit. That's not this organization. They are using education to provide other opportunities. And how boring is that? Hey, girl who's working in the red light district, I see you. I see that you have family obligations and that this culture places great shame on you if you don't meet those demands. And I know that you have 3 kids in the slums that you have to support through this work. So we're going to pay a stipend to meet those demands so that you can go to school and you can go become an engineer and you can now take care of your family. Like, that is amazing. Like,
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Are we doing the same thing here?
There are organizations doing amazing things like that, yeah. So that's one that we support in Thailand, but then we have an organization 3 hours away in West Virginia, and they are focusing on providing housing and a place in the middle of nowhere for trafficking survivors to heal so that they can have those opportunities. So we support them as well.
Just a thought. In a place like that, could you do some type of like work from home, or are there companies that need people to answer the phones?
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Like skills training to be able to get jobs. Yeah. It's all on the...
And make it all, from home, give them opportunity to make money and do something different. Very interesting.
No, there are, but they have to get stable in order to do that, and it's all part of that. Yeah, exactly. So there are amazing organizations doing that work, and just really consistent relational. I mean, I say it's a relational crime, then it also requires relational healing, because these individuals have no ability to trust or even understand what that is. I mean, when you think, again, coming back to the fact that it's so often someone they knew who they should have been able to trust, who should have cared for them or have been protecting them, if it's like that parent or, family member relationship. And that was completely shattered. And they don't, to be able to put those relational pieces back together is,
How do you manage the weight that this job and position bears? I imagine you're pretty stressed out and emotional a lot of the time. Maybe.
Well, you see, I almost cry several times. I am very invested in this work. I cry a lot. That's part of it, and I think that's a healthy thing. It's my nervous system regulating. I immediately am processing, and I allow myself to feel that, and I move on. And I think at first, for the longest time, I thought it was a weakness, and I think people who don't know how to handle that, they see me like, you're sensitive, Joy. Well, yes, I am very sensitive about this issue because I have seen people who've been impacted by it. I've worked with them. We hear stories all the time. But for me personally, I feel it, process it in that way. And not that I forget about it, but it does do something that allows me to continue instead of just keeping it all inside. And then we take rest. We make sure that we step away. Like I really try hard not to work on the weekends. Simple things like that it doesn't seem, but like I don't want to talk to you about work, or I mean I will talk to you about work, but I'm not going to be like, working on my presentations when I'm trying to be with my kids or trying to go on a date with my husband. Like, get out of my face. Like, I need space, because that allows me to be present when I'm here and to be able to do my job better. I have found, for me. I think it's different for everybody. So, but yeah, space, processing immediately, talking to my team, being aware of when it's really hard, like to make sure that we do process. Sometimes I don't like to talk about it, and so it takes me a few days, and then like talking to Michael about it is good. So, and counseling is good. I'm actually on the lookout for a counselor right now because I don't want to go to anyone here in Lynchburg because it's a tiny town. So I had somebody amazing a few years ago, and she moved.
Isn't that funny? Aren't you supposed to keep that stuff quiet?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Interesting. I talked to a few of you girls out there. What would you say to anybody who's watching this who might want to get involved? Like, do you guys need help? Are you hiring? Or how can people participate?
We just hired somebody. I'm excited. She's starting next week. So right now we're not hiring, but I do anticipate that we're going to be really growing a lot in the next year with the rollout of our curriculum. I will need more people to support that, especially with the vision that I have we don't want to just keep it here in Central Virginia. We view this as life-saving, honestly. I know that seems maybe dramatic, but again, in the context of equipping people with the things to know so that they can prevent, to me, that's like, yes.
Knowledge is power.
That's right. It's all like, just like that organization in Thailand, education. It's all about education. So,
I'd love to see more of that locally. One of my grand ideas for the veteran community, which is what I'm heavily invested in, is, are you familiar with Valor Farm?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Scratch that. I'll cut that out. But having a building downtown that is run by a few rehabilitated veterans, where you get a roof over your head, you get good, healthy, organic food, you have access to recovery like cold plunge, sauna, blood work, supplementation, vitamins, stuff like that. Everything that your body needs to be productive just as a human being. And then they are in charge of some of our down and wayward homeless people from the community who actually want to participate. They get to live there and they get to participate with these veterans, and they have to go out and do things like police call, pick up trash, clean walls, do city beautification work, maybe get tasked out to certain organizations that work for the city, get out, go out and do on-the-job training, things like that. Maybe we figure out how to find out who needs stuff done to their houses in certain areas of town. Like, just go out and do little projects, fix the roof, fix this, fix the porch, make things just better. And
especially in the elder community. That's so valuable,
Yeah, and for all their work and participation, they get to live very well and maybe have certain luxuries afforded to them in the community and people who want to participate.
I love
that. So that's my idea on how to fix some of our... Because I think homelessness has a lot to do with just not having a purpose, not feeling like you're connected to the tribe, the community. So injecting them back in, giving them a purpose. It's not going to work for everybody, but there will be the few that want to do it and will actually work. And I think even if it's just a few,
their life, it'll change their life, create a new cycle, a new pattern.
I'm an example of a government system that is working. So the state of Virginia allocates a certain amount of money for veterans to go get hyperbaric therapy. And it's something that I knew about, but I was able to do that. And I didn't know how I got money to it. I didn't know how it all worked. I just know that I reached out to somebody and they put me through the program. I did 40 dives in 20 days, which is just crazy expensive. It's insane. But I came out the other side so much better. Like I've said this a million times, but like I downloaded new software for my iPhone. Like my brain just worked better. And
through hyperbaric treatment.
Hyperbaric therapy, yeah.
And what, like, tell me what exactly, like, that's the cold?
No, so the science is, they put you in this this pressurized tube. It looks like a CAT scan machine made out of glass. They slide you in, they lock the door, they pressurize it, and it takes you down like 3 atmospheres, and then they pump it full of 100% oxygen. And the science that I think it is like the pressure allows the oxygen to get certain parts of your body, and oxygen is like the #1 ingredient for repair. So it helps. That's why cold plunge is so good. Like all the oxygen in your blood goes to your vital organs during the 4 minutes that you're in there, because it's simulating hypothermia. So your organs get this shock of oxygen, but not to get off track.
No, but
all of that oxygen goes to certain parts, and it's really good for your brain. It's been shown to help with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. So I came out of the other side like a new person, and so thankful. And without knowing how I had gotten that treatment, like I feel obligated to be a part of my community, to do all this that I'm doing. And so I think I'm an example of a system that works well. And I want to just kind of keep that.
That's cool.
That forward progress.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you found a place?
Not yet, no. So the idea is kind of just forming.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready to talk to somebody.
Okay.
I have somebody in mind.
Okay.
He's the one who's helping to revitalize all the buildings here. I feel like he'd be really down for it.
All right.
Just let me know.
And this is why I say things out loud and have these conversations, because
people connect people.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I've only been here almost 2 years, and I'm so invested and so intertwined with everybody who's moving and making decisions and doing stuff. And I couldn't be happier.
That's cool.
So I genuinely care about this topic. I'd love to be a part of it however I can, even if it's making videos or, whatever I can do. I guess we can end here, but if there's anything, if there was one, piece of nugget advice that you could give a parent or somebody that's, maybe that's too much of a loaded question. Maybe we've already covered a bunch of stuff.
No, I would love to say, because I think this is a really challenging topic, and I think a lot of venues go about it with the fear-mongering kind of approach. And I'm not going to deny that it is scary or terrifying to consider your child or someone you know and love being exploited and trafficked and forced to sell them, to have sex or whatever it might be. It's horrible to think about, the abuse, whatever. But we always want people to know that there is hope. And I think that we kind of talked about that already, because when we're looking at a person as a person, even if they are the predator down the road on the other side, like, you can identify where you can still invest in them in a positive way, where you can still love them. And I think in our work, at least at Freedom 424, we want parents to know, yes, it's scary, but there's also hope in it. If you educate yourself, if you equip yourself, if you have conversations with your kids early and often, it's not rocket science. It's not this big, overwhelming, because I think that's where parents get stalled up. It's like, I don't know enough about it, and so I'm just not going to talk about it at all. Or this will never happen to my kid because I'm going to keep them locked down and safe and never let them touch social media. Not the answer, I'm sorry, because they will be exposed eventually, even if it's outside. Once they leave your home, your protection, what? Then you're just going to set them free, and now they have no idea how to operate at all. That's also very unrealistic. So we always like to reinforce there is hope in this. It's not it's not just this big scary thing, and you are just left helpless. Like, there are things that you can do to protect your kids, and we want to be there for you, to have those conversations, to come alongside you, to make it less scary and to make it less of a mountain and to just break it down. And that's what we do.
What's the best way to get a hold of you? Is it the phone, email?
All of the above. You can freedom424.org or our phone number 434-582-4517. I can give that to you.
I'll put everything in the description.
Yeah, you can and then info@freedom424.org is a good email, or you can just email me, joy@freedom424.org. But really any of the staff would be able to, support anyone. But I think that's the biggest thing, because it is not a fun thing to talk about, but we must be talking about things that are challenging, and we must be challenging ourselves as parents, as adults, as community members to face the tough things for the purpose of protecting kids. So.
Absolutely. I don't know if anybody's going to watch this, because this has been one of the loudest. There's so many beeps and sirens. Is it always this loud? I'm sure it is.
Oh, they're doing construction right now, so it's a little louder than normal.
I used to film this when I first started downtown in one of the old buildings, and there was always noise. Like, you can't get away from it unless you have a perfect studio. But I'm definitely going to test the quality of these mics and see what it picks up.
Right.
But thank you so much for giving me your time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
And
it was good.
I look forward to collaborating or meeting your contact and
Daryl.
And having
and I hope they answered your question, because I realized I didn't really answer your question about how people can get engaged, but we will be hiring eventually. But we have volunteer opportunities here and there.
What's your next big event coming up? Like, what do you?
We have in the month of April. It's 424. Get it?
I do. Where does the name come from? Not to cut you off.
Yeah, no. When our founder came back from Thailand, she, faced with that whole issue of using $24 to traffic, to buy a person for 24 hours using $24. She came back and just told college students, hey, buy this t-shirt for $24, help us bring freedom. And this money will go to that organization. So basically use your $24 to bring freedom, Freedom 424.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's funny, you talk to her now, she's like, I didn't even think it would grow. Yeah, she's so wonderful. Like, she lives up in Indiana. That's how we got our name, Freedom 424. And
so in the month of April.
Our banner month, we will start the month with an event here on Bedford Avenue. It's the Spring Fling, and I think what are we calling? Freedom 424 Freedom Fest. I don't know. We're really leaning into the whole freedom thing. But there's going to be the road shut down from the top of the street down to Dahlia. And all the businesses right now, we have 10 businesses involved.
Were you responsible for the last one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's right.
We went to that one.
Yeah.
I still got a bone to pick with Oliver.
Why? What did he do?
He had a sandwich on the menu for like $17. And I bought it thinking it was going to be amazing. And then they gave me, when they called my name, I went up and they had this cardboard little dish with a cooked piece of fish inside. And I was like, I looked up at them and I was like, I ordered a sandwich. And they're like, and they looked at me and they're like, we can give you a bun if you want. And I was like, yeah, that'd be a great start. There's nothing else that comes on it. It's just a bun and the fish. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay.
For $17 down in Marsh here?
Yeah. And I love Oliver. I know him. I probably should be saying this to him in person and not on the camera. I'll probably cut this out.
They had they were slammed, he said.
Well, I think they were just overwhelmed. Yeah. Because, we go there all the time. We buy all of our fish from them. So good. But I was like, and maybe it was $14. But either way, if I'm spending $10 on a sandwich, I better get a sandwich.
Yeah, they said they were like, yeah, it was good. So that was our first one. So our events, we have an event coordinator on staff. She's our event and education coordinator. She did that. It was so overwhelmingly successful. We're going to do that on April 6th, but a spring opportunity. And my goal is for every event, we want to be implementing education, prevention education. So we have mobile education stations. So we'll have those stationed down the street at different points that people have to walk through. And it's just, talking about, do you know what social media decisions can lead you to? So interactive things, or human trafficking 101, or what are the other boards? I can't even remember off the top of my head, but there's 4 different opportunities to educate, and the topics come from our curriculum, but it's set up in a way that's a little more interactive. So we use those at our events. So that'll be out there, and that's at the beginning of April. And then April 19th and 20th is our family fun night and 5K run for their lives. And that was our banner initiative way back when we started. Christine came back from Thailand. They, buy t-shirts for $24. It kind of started growing. They got her church behind it. They started a 5K race series. They had all these races called Run for Their Lives. And so it was used as a way to bring people together to educate them about human trafficking. Because when she came back from Thailand, she said, there's two things that are evident. Let's not reinvent the wheel by just starting another nonprofit that's doing the same as all these other ones. Let's join and come alongside the ones that are already doing the work. So two things that she identified was that people needed to be more aware of the human trafficking issue, and we needed to raise funds for these organizations. So really we're doing those same things today, but we've deepened. We provide awareness at these events, but we've really deepened that focus to be prevention education as well, targeting the youth, parents, and occupations. And then the funding organizations, we do that. The restoration side of things, we fund them to let them do that work while we focus on the prevention.
At some point, would I be able to maybe get some guidance on how to throw an event? So I'm a board member on Lynchburg Area Veterans Council, and this Veterans Day, I'm starting to plan a concert. I'm going to bring some of my friends from Nashville, who are all veterans, to Lynchburg to play alongside maybe a couple local veterans who are artists, and put them all on the same stage. I've got contacts to like all the people that we would need to invite that would participate in the auctions and would spend the money on the tables. But I'm going to need things like stage and sound system and all the things to make it an event. So I guess another question would be, maybe would you guys like to put your name on the banner? Because we want to do like a red carpet thing. We want to work with a few organizations. I want to get Lynchburg Area Veterans Council to start working with some other organizations that they're not already working with. I know that was a lot there, but
no,
so I've got an idea for a really cool concert, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
And you want it to be fundraising for the Lynchburg Veterans?
I want it to be a fundraising event for, one, I want the veterans who play to get paid, because I noticed that a lot of veterans get asked to play on Veterans Day and they don't get paid, which is one of my issues with another organization locally. Not only do they not get paid, but they don't get the chance to play. They have a civilian sing songs about veteran issues, and then they pay him.
A civilian, nice.
Yeah, but they don't pay veterans who would sing the song from a personal place. So it's my attempt to right some what I think are wrongs. I want some good veteran talent to come in and get paid to perform, and then the rest of the money goes for towards the idea which I just talked about, but then also to some other organizations that are doing some good things. And helping me, I guess, bring my vision to fruition. Like you offering to help me bring that to life makes me compelled to help you shed a light on what you're doing and involve you in what I'm doing.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, just let us know, like, if you have sponsorship levels, or if there's a way we can support, maybe through, I don't know, you let me know, but maybe.
Maybe we could start with you just showing me what that looks like. Because sponsorship, like all that stuff, that way when I go and talk to other people, I don't sound like a moron.
I gotcha. No worries. So Lauren is our event coordinator. She wasn't here today. She had to take her son to UVA for a checkup. So today's Tuesday? What's today? Tuesday. She should be in tomorrow, but I can connect you guys via email. She can at least give you some like event 101 pointers, just some things to be aware of. And then sponsorship material, we have some out there. I'll give you that. You can just, I don't care, duplicate it with your own logo, whatever. It's not rocket science. It's just like, hey, for X amount of dollars, you get this promotion, and for X amount of dollars, you get this. So you can like change it based on whatever you're doing. But it's better to not start from ground zero.
Yeah.
And then, do you have a location?
I have one in mind, and they seem responsive.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just a matter of,
are they giving it to you for free?
I hope so. Not only are we going to get the venue for free, but we also might get them to contribute on the back end.
Nice.
So
smart.
It's the Trading Post. Have you been in there? So that space is.
Oh wait, yes I have. Like they just opened.
Yeah.
You're talking downstairs or upstairs?
The upstairs and the.
Tony West.
Yeah.
That his building, but the upstairs part.
Right, where all the cars used to be.
Yeah.
Where the old street
aren't they
lights
making
are.
it like an event space upstairs and downstairs is the store, right?
I think, well, I heard they were going to do like a billiards hall downstairs and make it like fun and pretty cool. Which
Maybe it's not the same place.
No, you're right.
Isn't it like a coffee shop and like a grocery store? But there is like another space.
Yeah.
So, connection, the guy who's doing all the repairs on that is the one I want to introduce you to.
Okay.
So you might already know him. I don't know. Daryl Calfee, do you know him?
I don't think so.
Oh, he's great. He's doing all that. He owns Penny Lane Properties and they are restoring that. But there is a huge space and it looks so cool. So if that's what you're thinking, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I want to do, I want to make it like a red carpet event, make it super fun, but I want everyone to dress in theme. So I also need to reach out to Liberty to see if we can't get some costumes. So the idea is that we start with a conflict. I don't know if it's Civil War, World War I, but everyone dresses to the time. And then every year, if we make this an annual thing, we progress through the conflicts. And then like just give a little bit of history on the conflict and what it all means. I mean, maybe we start with the Revolutionary War since that was, what started the whole thing. But it just depends on what we have available as far as costumes and.
Or just let people source it themselves. That would be fun.
No, it'd be fun. I think it'd be cool.
Do you think that most veterans are like pro-military?
I think like when I got out, I wasn't. I had such a bad taste in my mouth about the Marine Corps that I was anti-government, I was anti-establishment of any kind. I really, I sold everything I owned and I went off into the wilderness. And along the way, I embraced it because it was the one thing that made me universally accepted.
Identify by something.
Was this one thing. Like I served in the Marine Corps and that made me okay in most people's eyes because I was jumping around through town. So it was like I developed a relation with it over time, and then when I got here, it just solidified it. Like Steve Bozeman and everything that's going on here, he's like, this is who you got to be because we got to.
But what about it? Is it more of like the brotherhood kind of thing, the open doors that you get because you served and you did that, and thank you for that, by the way.
No,
but
yeah.
Is it more of that part than?
Well, I think your original question was most veterans. I was telling you about me.
Sure.
But I think most veterans, they kind of go through that where it's like, almost like they reject it because they don't want to miss it. Because it's a powerful thing, right? The camaraderie that you have with this group of people, at least in my experience, is unlike anything that you'll find again.
Because no one knows except for you.
But we as human beings, we crave purpose. We crave a position in the tribe. And you get that on a crazy level in the military, especially if you're asked to do some pretty intense stuff. So I think most veterans, they do embrace it. Was that how you asked it?
Kind of, because I'm just wondering, I can get behind the craving for purpose. Like, I could not do a job where I did not feel there was meaning. I mean, that's why this meets all the things because it's hard, but I can't imagine doing anything else because to me it's the worst thing that happens. Sorry. No. But what if, so does the disenchantment come when you feel like the purpose that you were working towards was corrupt?
Yes, for me, I wouldn't say that everybody shares that view. I still have a lot of most of my friends here in Lynchburg are Vietnam veterans. Yeah. And that was arguably one of the worst conflicts that we've ever been a part of, as far as what had purpose.
Right.
And they all, they wouldn't have done anything differently.
Really?
Yeah, but that's just the way you feel. It's unlike anything else. That's why I think the suicide rate is so high, because that's one of the big issues that my video that I have on this channel that has the most views and attention is me talking about my suicide attempt and why I did it and how I still kind of deal with that residual effect today. But yeah, it's if you lose your status in the tribe or don't know what your tribe is at all, it's a very lonely place.
Yeah.
And Lynchburg is, the things that they're doing with veterans here, the veterans that are a part of these organizations that are, you know, out there actively doing what they're doing and finding people like me to then, you know, keep this going. It's crazy. And I've never felt closer to my Marine Corps experience or my tribe status as I do here. And
that's really cool.
yeah, and I just want that to keep going. I want to be the example of what it looks like, because another thing that was bothering me for a long time is how veterans are viewed. Like,
that's right.
Veterans and homeless people were kind of next door neighbors.
Right.
And it's like, wait a minute.
It's not
how do we go from
like,
being the most productive human beings, arguably, I mean, the things that we're asked to do with, you know, the tools that we have, it's crazy. That's why there's so many like stories of these human beings going above and beyond to in the namesake of their country and their brothers, and then you leave all that, and then it's like, well, now what? Right. Like nothing makes as much sense as that on a primal level. So yeah, I just want to show that we're capable of so much more, and also like there's still stuff that can happen, that can come. If Lynchburg got invaded today the way that it did 200 years ago, who's going to stand up and fight? Who's going to protect the ones that can't fight? Who's going to watch out for the women and children? Not to say that women can't fight, but like just that ethos of being the protectors. I want to reinstill that. And even if it's not on a physical level, like we still need to stand up for our rights and to make sure that we're not letting crooked politicians come in and rewrite the rules and the laws. I mean, because we're seeing it all happen around us. So let Lynchburg be the example of what all this is. And
I like that.
Yeah, but concerts, I love music. Yeah. Music got me through a lot of my bullshit. Yeah. And if I could sing or play an instrument, I feel like I would want to be an artist. So I want to elevate and lift up some of my friends who have amazing stories and have been through some crazy shit, and I want to acknowledge them, and I want people to celebrate that, and I want to raise some money and give it to good organizations and do some fun stuff with it. Like,
I love it.
Just try to make a mark.
Yeah. And what is the date that you're aiming for?
So Veterans Day is November 11th.
So you want to
it'll be the weekend, because I think this year it falls on a Monday. So I'd love it to be that Saturday. The grand vision is to have them come and do a free concert down at Monument Terrace on Friday for the troop rally. And then that'll be all for all the veterans. And then Saturday is for all, you know, the pockets that want to participate and enjoy the night. And so it might be the weekend before, the weekend after, or the weekend of, depending on the artists and working with their schedules.
Very cool. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So we got time.
Yeah.
But
that's
also,
good. That's good.
It's going to come quick, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So
let us help you if and how we can. I don't know. I'm going to write myself a note to connect you with, because if I don't, I will forget. Writing myself.
Well, I hope this was productive. And again, I appreciate you taking your time.
And Lauren, yeah, no worries. I hope you got something. I feel like I was a little scattered at first, but
that's me all the time.
Cool. It's fine.
I don't even know if these things are still recording.
Oh gosh.
This could have ended 15 minutes after we started.
Just
always a surprise.
Summarize.
It still says record.
All right.